All right, welcome. We're going to learn about event handlers. Prior to this video, you should already have either watched or completely understand interfaces. We're going to use them extensively in this. So if you don't understand interfaces, or at least have an introduction to it, it could get a little confusing. What we're going to do is we're going to simulate an ATM machine that's going to trigger off notifications when we reach certain types of situations. So we'll create an ATM machine. An ATM machine starts off with a certain amount of cash, and it has a bank manager. Right here, I created a responsible person, and a responsible person implements the bank manager interface. So since it implements the interface, I have these two methods on here that will receive messages when an ATM machine wants to notify the bank manager. Then I create Mr. Stride here with a name, and then I go over, which I don't use here apparently, and then I create a trust account. A trust account is not a person. Mr. Stride is a person. Where's Mr. Stride? Mr. Stride is a person, okay? And all it does is have a name. But my person account, my person class, implements bankable and is notifiable. So because it's bankable, it can create an account. And because it's notifiable, a person can receive a notification. In here, what I'm doing is I'm saying my trust is only bankable. It cannot be notified because it's not a person. So what we did is our ATM machine is that when we want to make a withdrawal, we have to give the customer, and we have to give who it's going to be notified, okay? And then how much cash we're going to withdraw. So that's what we do. And then we make notifications for suspicious activities or low account balances. So that's kind of the setup. And what we've done so far is really just use these objects that implement these methods to handle all the notifications. Now, truth be told, notifications in this type of way is what we call very synchronous and single-threaded. When we get into graphical user interfaces, then there's multiple threads going on and things work asynchronously. Or if you're doing a website application and you're trying to communicate over the web or over the internet, then you'll want to do some asynchronous communications so that way the computer can always be working. In this case, we're just going to kind of squint and not worry about the fact that it's all very synchronous. What we're going to do is we're going to learn of different ways to set up notifications when certain events happen. That's the main gist of what we're going to do in this video. So when I run this today, you'll see that my person gets notified of suspicious activity, the account balance is low, and it's overdrawn, and the responsible person, who's the bank manager, says that it needs more cash. Okay, I can add one more thing in here. I can do ATM. I'm going to do deposit. Okay, and then I'm going to go ahead and add it to Stride, and I'm going to deposit a lot of money, okay, because I get paid so much money, you have no idea how much money I get paid to be this teacher that I am. So now when I run it, what you see is the responsible manager received a text message that there was too much cash in the ATM machine, and this is how much cash was in it, or at least how much was attempted to be deposited. So now I want to set up different notifications. So the first thing we're going to do is we're going to set it up so that this very object, so that an object that implements the thing can receive notification. So we're going to have a responsible person who is Mr. Everything, and I'm going to create an ATM machine, and I'm going to set it up with $6,000. And here I'm taking my person who's responsible, and I'm just saying that he's a bank manager. This happens implicitly, but here I'm explicitly doing it. Before I had a different, constructor, which I don't need to do anymore. So if I take that out, that comment was old. I can also then, when I do a withdrawal, I can go ahead and I can cast my person, who is a responsible person, into my banker, is bankable, into bankable. And I can cast my person to something that is notifiable, and then I can just pass it in this way. All right, so instead of doing all this stuff up here, what I'm going to do is I'm just going to close that, and I'm going to, this is old code, okay? So now up here, what I'm going to do is I'm going to call with this implements. And so that way we can see that this code is going to run. We're going to create this person, do this ATM machine, we're going to do this stuff, and then I'm going to get some cash out of my ATM with my bankable object. Oh, I haven't done this yet. Let me do this first. Okay, and I'm going to get this to be, let's make sure this works. So far, nothing new, right? Everything seems to be the same. All I've done was I've extracted out the interface from my object person and I passed it in. But here's something cool. If I want this object here to be, to do something special, first I need to create an object. So I'm going to make this an instance. So I'm going to come up here. I'm going to say my main name is going to equal new name. And then right here, I'm going to call this object main. And I'm going to call, so now I have an instance of my object of class main. Comes in, everything should run without any sort of change. But what I'm going to do is I'm going to say, you know what? I want this object to receive the notification. So I'm just going to put implements notifiable in here. Now right away I get an error because it's not notifiable yet because I haven't added the methods. So when I add it in, it should have gone down to the bottom. Let me just grab this puppy and I'm going to pull it up into view. We're going to do some other things here in a second. So now this object is notifiable. So I can just print out my message. I'm going to say this main object. Okay. Got notified of this message. Then instead of notifying my person, I'm just going to notify this. This is the object main that I am calling. And so I'm just passing in this right here. So when I run, notified, oh, look, it says this main object got notified. There we go. We got this object because I added implements this interface, and then I actually provided the method that implements. So what I just created, this is an event handler. This is an event handler. That event handler is defined by the interface notifiable. And so when I call a method that wants to notify something, I can just pass in this object, right? Well, let's do something else. Let's say that I have a phone, and this phone implements something that is notifiable. Okay, I'm going to implement a phone. And so since it's notifiable, I'm going to say the phone here, and it's owned by, so I create a constructor that's going to own by a certain person. So when I go back into main here, so now I'm going to call with an object here. Okay, so let's call, we're not going to do this, we're going to say with an object here. And then when I create an object, what I'm going to do is, first I'm going to create my phone. No, first I'm going to create I'm going to create these guys, right? Because I need to have that in order to do my ATM machine. And then I'm going to say, well, I want to have a notifiable person. So let's do Mr. Stride again. He's a person. And so we're going to do new Mr. Stride. And we'll give him a different name this time. And I create a phone. So let's do a new phone object. And in the constructor, it takes a person. So I'm going to put Stride in there. Stride is a person. Wait, this is Mr. Stride. Phone here, we're doing some polymorphism here. Phone takes a person, but Mr. Stride is a person. So I can go ahead and I can put the person in there. So now I got that phone object in there. So now when I do, let me get some cash withdrawn here. And I don't do this anymore. So when I withdraw from my ATM machine, the customer here is going to be Stride. That's my customer. And since he's a person and person is notifiable, but what I'm going to notify is I'm going to notify the phone because a phone is notifiable. So when I call this, when I get notified, you'll see that it'll call the phone object. So phone owned by Jeffy got this message. Look at that. So my account still dealt with a customer that's bankable. My phone is not bankable, it's just a phone. The phone happens to be owned by Mr. Stride. So I created another object that receives the notification because the object, the phone object, implements the interface for that notification. So this is how you can receive a notification, is by having a new class implement the object or implement the interface that needs to be called on the notification. So that was a second way of doing a notification. So now I'm going to do yet a completely more difficult mechanism. Okay, again, I should have all this stuff in my class here. Too much copy and pasting here. Okay, so I'm going to have a responsible person. I'm going to create an ATM machine. And then what I'm going to do is, instead of doing a phone, I'm going to create a class that's going to do this. Oh, I need my customer. So let me just do my customer here first. And this right here, this is going to be weird. I'm going to see a new thing. It's called an anonymous inline class. I'm not going to do a phone. What is my method that I need to send it? It's notifiable. And I'm going to give it a body. Public. So what is notifiable? Let me look at notifiable right here. Notifiable does this method right there. So come into main. I'm going to give it an implementation. So it's going to system.out.println OMG inline anonymous class. This is very similar to creating an object that I did up here, and I passed in my object, but instead I'm creating an object right here that, since an interface is very much like an object class or like a class, I'm creating an instance of an object that implements this notifiable interface. I'm putting the code for the interface right in there, and then I'm still passing in $800 on my side. So with anonymous class, OMG, let's see if we can get that notifying going. So with an anonymous class. OMG, inline anonymous class. I'm just passing around notifications everywhere. I'm hooking up event handlers in all sorts of different crazy ways. This is with anonymous class. Now let's do this again. Copy and paste, must copy and paste because it's my favorite thing in the world to do. I got my responsible person for my banker. I got my ATM machine. I got my person. And then what I'm going to do is I'm going to create a lambda. What is a lambda? A lambda is a method without a name. And so here is a method that I would define. Here is the lambda that represents this method. So if you notice in notifiable, really, I just want to call this method. That's all I really want to do. You sure do a lot of work, right, with this anonymous class of having to create a class and to create the method here. Can't I just like shorthand create this method right here anonymously, nice and fast? And the answer is yes, I can, by doing a lambda. So here we go. I'm going to eliminate all of this code that was my lambda, and I'm going to use this type of syntax here. So what does my method take as a parameter? My method takes a string as a parameter, but my lambdas, okay, they don't have, right? They don't have any declared types in the formal parameters, so they don't have to have, and they don't have to have a return type if it requires a return type. We're doing void, so there's no return type. So all I'm going to do is I'm going to take my parameter s, I'm going to use this fancy arrow syntax, and then I'm just going to call a method right here, print line lambda, and then I'm going to also take my parameter, my formal parameter s, and I'm going to print it out. Okay, and that's it. And now, since I didn't do anything fancy, I don't even need a semicolon here. I just do the one-liner. This is my method. So when I run this with lambdas up here, run with lambdas, I run this again. Oh my gosh, lambda, it got called. Lambda got called. So now there was another even faster way, right, of just doing that. Now let's say that I wanted to have a huge method here. I wanted to do a whole bunch of stuff. I can, by putting the curly brace there, okay? If I put a curly brace there, I can take my method and I can just put, I can print that out. Now I do need my semicolon. And then I can do system.out, print line, another thing, right? So now when I run this, you can see that I print out another. So now I'm doing this a longer method here, but a longer method sometimes can be, well, clunky, right? So let's do this. I'm going to create a public void on my lambda. And it's going to take a string parameter s. And then I'm just going to take this code right here. I'm just going to plug it in. So that's what it's going to do. And right here, to shorten this up, I'm just going to call on my lambda s. So my lambda expression, all it does is call a method. And this lambda expression takes the s parameter. But you know what? I'm just to be super tricky, I'm going to do another one called s2. And so I'm just going to put right there. And then I'm just going to, right here, I'll do plus s2. So you can see that even though my method here, because I'm notifiable, takes one parameter right here, that I put one parameter over here. And if I wanted to, I could put parentheses around it. Okay, it's still a valid lambda expression. Over here, I can call any method with whatever parameters I want, using s or not. In fact, I could do masked. So now it's gonna send this, and so this s just totally went away. So when I run this now, right, you don't see the message in there at all. Let me put the s back in there, and then I run this. So you can still see the suspicious activity, the s gets passed through. So I can have a lambda expression call another method. But you know what, now I've got all this extra typing here. So I'm going to use method pointers instead. Oh, this is cool. One last way to do an event handler, okay? So first I have to set up my ATM and my responsible person and my person here. And then I'm going to call, right, I'm going to withdraw money, okay? I'm going to withdraw some money. And instead of a lambda expression here, I just want to call a method. So here's what I'm going to do. I'm going to do public void my method, and it's going to take one string s, and then here, right, not nano time, my method pointer, okay, and then I'm just going to copy this real fast and put this in here. And I'm not going to call lambda, it's the message. Okay, so the message is this. So how would I call it from down here with my method pointer? It's really simple. I would do this, my method. Okay, this, my method. Oh, I got to make it part of my thing. So now with my method pointer, I'm going to call my method pointer right here. I'm going to call with method pointers. I run this, and I see my method pointer, the message suspicious activity, all the event handling is getting sent to this method right here because I pointed to it. If I just put main here, that doesn't work because main is not static. This had no reason for it to not be static because I don't reference anything in the object. So if I make it static, then I put the class name, the 2 colons, and then my method there. Same thing, but now I'm calling a static method. If it's not a static method, I pull that out and I replace the class name with this object so it knows which object to call when I run it. So those are lots of different ways to hook up event handlers. And the best place to do this is in a GUI situation where you have click events and mouse events and keyboard events and all sorts of different events. All the events are defined with interfaces, okay? And sometimes not all of these are you able to do. So for example, in I forgot, that's one last thing, I gotta get this done. My responsible person, right? My responsible person receives a message down here. Can I put my responsible person in my manager right here? So let's see, I'm in method pointers. So let's go down to method pointers here. And my responsible person, this is just a handler, right? So how can I just do, I'd love to be able to do like S and then, oh, I know, let's just do this, my method, right? Wait, why doesn't that work? Shouldn't that just work? This my method? It's just an interface. Let's look at the interface. Responsive. I'm looking for a banker, right? So let's look. I go to banker, bank manager. Oh wait, there's 2 methods here. So even though I wanted to notify the manager with this, it's got 2. It's not because it's calling the onText manager. That's not why. It's because there's 2 methods in here. When you have 2 methods in an interface, then you are left to the means that were done earlier. So if you have 2 methods in there, you either have to do it using this object, right, where we pass in that implements all the methods. You have to create an object that implements all the methods, or you have to do anonymous class, and instead of just 1 method in here, you would have to implement all the methods. So if I wanted to do that right here, I would do new, it's a bank manager. Okay, and then I have to end that. And my bank manager has 2 methods. So I have to implement those 2 methods right here. And so let me give them methods, system.out.println, my bank manager plus message. Okay, and then right here, if I wanted to do this, I would then say bank manager plus message, and I'm just going to bank with text bank manager with message plus key. Okay, so now what I've done is I've created a new bank manager anonymous inline class with these 2 methods that implements the interface. So now I can create my ATM machine with method pointers. So if I run this, you can see that the messages count as overdrawn and the bank manager needs more cash. Okay, so I did call this method right here when I notified the bank manager. Lots of different ways to do things. If you have an interface with only 1 method, you're given a lot of slick stuff. The fastest and most commonly and widely used are Lambda expressions, okay? So lambdas used all over the place. And if you have a long thing to do, or if you have a lot of methods, sometimes or a lot of instructions or statements, you'll just call another method. Or sometimes you can just use method pointers, which is super slick and cool. As long as your method has the exact same signature of the method that you're trying to call in your interface, then everything just hooks up nice and clean. It's so super cool. I hope you enjoyed how to hook up event handlers.